Wrestling is an art form. As of late, that art form has taken a lot of criticism on what's possibly wrecking that art. If you followed Twitter or social media or dirt sheets as of late, there's been a lot of criticism regarding certain wrestling styles, things that are happening in the business, and what is pretty much, quote unquote, not right for the business. If you don't know what I'm talking about, a lot of things have happened recently in the past 6 months that have brought in a lot of coverage to the world of wrestling. Now, that coverage hasn't always been great, but a lot of this stuff, again, brings that media exposure. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a couple different things that really stand out. In WWE, there's the art of not selling. Dave Meltzer recently had tweeted out when somebody asked him a question regarding selling. Batista had said on his show a year or two ago that WWE talents are told not to sell after pay-per-views. The only time I can remember recently that there was selling after a pay-per-view was Shane McMahon after his death-defying stunt from the Hell in a Cell. But other than that, and not selling in WWE, Apollo Crews is definitely guilty of that after having a backstage beatdown. That's just in the Fed. In the biggest land, in the biggest company, on the biggest promotion on earth, you're not selling or really allowing psychology to be there. Why should the indies have that psychology? Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you've probably at least seen the GIFs on Twitter of some absolutely insane segments ranging from the Young Bucks Superkick party that they just absolutely destroy everybody. The same Superkick that used to be a devastating maneuver and finish matches now just being used as a spot fest. Or a guy like Joey Ryan, the king of sleaze, using his member. Okay, we're not going to be PG. He's using his dick for professional wrestling to get an upper hand. Or you got Will Ospreay and Ricochet performing what some former wrestling legends are calling over-choreographed crap. Now, in art, there are many, many different forms. Now, recently, Ricochet came out and responded to some of these comments. One of the guys that has spoken out vocally was Vader. Vader was big in New Japan. And when it comes to a lot of the style of professional wrestling, especially in New Japan, there isn't necessarily, there is a lot of psychology that comes, a lot more than WWE as of late in New Japan, but there is a lot more Spotfest type action. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can find the GIFs between Will Ospreay and Ricochet where they do this awesome segment where they're flipping back and forth past each other, and they ultimately land in like a Superman-esque type pose. And while it looks phenomenal, it has garnered a lot of criticism on the internet. Guys such as Joey Ryan and Ricochet have poked fun at this. Joey Ryan put out a Twitter poll and basically said, what's killing professional wrestling more? The fact that Candice LeRae, and if you don't know who Candice LeRae is, I highly suggest you check her out. She's one of the best female wrestlers on the planet right now. And the one thing she does that you may not agree with, or maybe you think is cool, is a lot of the times she wrestles men. It's something that a lot of old school wrestlers don't understand. And to be honest with you, I somewhat get their point when it comes to women wrestling men. There is something awkward about it, especially with the social construct around violence against women, violence against men, relationship abuse, things like that. But when you're in an art form and you're telling a story and both sides are in on it, I don't see a problem with Candice LeRae wrestling men. The other thing that he put on the poll was his dick. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can look up the YouPornplex. It's basically a spot that he did, and it was over in Japan that somebody grabbed onto his dick. Joey Ryan hulks up, and then ultimately he would go and flip them. And that set off a worldwide trend that made Joey Ryan an absolutely huge name and got him a YouPorn sponsorship. It got him covered on many, many media outlets, and that garners the question, in today's day and age, what is good coverage and what is bad coverage? Joey Ryan did more publicity regarding that dick stunt than WWE has done forever, sans WrestleMania. Joey Ryan was featured on GQ, Vice, national media, TV, and it was a huge, huge deal. Joey Ryan currently wrestling on the Indies. You can catch him on Lucha Underground. I personally really, really like Joey Ryan. He fits a different style of wrestling. The same way Colt Cabana was told that he wouldn't be a big deal in the wrestling industry from WWE. Scotty Goldman didn't do well in WWE and then ultimately would go back to the Indies. Now has one of the biggest wrestling podcasts in the world, is a top indie talent, is now wrestling back in ROH, and just recently competed against Jay Lethal for the ROH title. Now, does funny equal money? Does every match have to be this super serious in-ring competition? Now, one of the big criticisms from a lot of these wrestling legends is the stuff that the younger talents are doing now does not suspend the disbelief that is professional wrestling. That when you see somebody step in the ring, that you could suspend your disbelief that this person could beat this person could get a pin. David versus Goliath, the ultimate underdog overcoming the big guy. You see stuff that does look extremely choreographed, and I'll be the first one to tell you, I've been long critical of PWG, even though they are some of my favorite matches of all time. Watching, and Ricochet is actually in one of my favorite matches from Ring of Honor, not Ring of Honor, PWG, from Bola, I think it was, from Bola 2011 or 2012, I can't remember offhand. And one was against Kevin Steen, and they absolutely lit it on fire. And the big thing with the Indies is you're right. You're not telling a story because a lot of these guys are traveling from fed to fed and are filling dates. When you're in a long-term company such as the WWE, and you have this primetime spot to tell these stories, it's often a lot different. A lot of legends see what's happening on the Indies and they're getting upset and they're saying it's wrecking professional wrestling. But why is it wrecking wrestling? If the biggest company in the land, WWE, isn't using psychology, isn't using the art of selling, and oftentimes is doing more harm to the business than good, why can't the indie guys explore and do these new moves? Now, it's true. A lot of the stuff that they're doing will never make it to a company like WWE. Joey Ryan in a PG era will never get signed to the WWE and be able to use his YouPornplex live on national television. Now, it's true in the business, you're never supposed to say never. Look at Sting in the WWE. But knowing Vince McMahon, and I don't know them, but knowing what they're after, their target audience, Joey Ryan isn't going to be in the WWE. So if he's never going to be in the WWE and he's not working towards that, what is wrong with him doing something that's getting him all the exposure in the world? And I have to be honest, it's probably making him a lot of money and selling him a lot of merch. The Young Bucks are very vocal when it comes to selling their merchandise, and oftentimes, and it's actually pretty funny that the wrestling matches are just infomercials to sell their merch. If you're not on the Fed, if you're not in the biggest shows on television, if you're not in TNA, or if you're not in these promotions that have these TV deals, why do you have to do the norm? Why can't we have both? Why can't we have all three or four? Why can't we have the super serious matches that employ ring psychology, the guys that use the comedy segments, the guys that use sleaze like Joey Ryan, Colt Cabana using comedy, the guys that do the high-flying super action such as Ricochet, Will Ospreay, etc. Now, I will say this. I do not think any of these wrestlers are wrecking the industry. This industry has changed. Just like the television industry has changed. How many people want to sit through a show when they can binge watch on Netflix or Hulu? How many people want to watch TV live versus DVR? How many people would rather watch on the internet versus their cable box? Now, the proponents of this style of wrestling are often very vocal against these legends, calling them out of touch, telling them that the business has evolved and they need to get with the program. It's 2016, they say. Things have changed, and that's true. Guys that want to get into the business often see people get signed to NXT or some of the biggest companies with absolutely no training, and they bring them in fresh. Meanwhile, they're out there doing these things just to try to make a living or do the thing they love the most. Does that make it wrong? Does it make it wrong that Joey Ryan is being wildly successful, is getting booked everywhere over the use of a penis spot? Or does that tell that, yes, on that card, there are those spots that involves a dick, but there's also absolutely fantastic wrestling. There's comedy, there's psychology, there's high flying, there's mat-based wrestling. There are so many different art forms within the genre that to say one of them is wrecking the industry doesn't make any sense. What wrecks the industry is nobody talking about it, nobody buying tickets, nobody coming to shows. Now, it's easy to look at guys like Vader and say they're just jaded. They don't know what they're talking about. It's true. The business has evolved. But does he have a point? These guys are going out here and killing themselves and destroying their bodies for what? They're not always telling a story, but they are expressing an art form. I'm more concerned about their well-being than I am the thought of them wrecking professional wrestling. When you see people in the WWE that are getting signed that have no training and you're trying to get into the industry, or that is your ultimate goal to eventually end up at WrestleMania, you may have the mindset that you have to do things bigger and better to get noticed. But what if your goal isn't to end up in the big Fed? What if your goal isn't to sell psychology? What if your goal is to go out there and make somebody's day, make somebody laugh, make somebody pop, make somebody forget about something that is going on in their life? To me, that is suspending disbelief. In an era when reality television reigns supreme, Donald Trump is the biggest heel in the land, getting the most exposure in the world, but still growing in the polls. It tells you something. It's 2016 and things have changed. The idea that these guys are making it so you can't suspend disbelief, maybe you don't have to suspend disbelief. Maybe you sit back and enjoy the show. And if you don't enjoy that show, well, guess what? There's many, many other options that could satisfy your tastes. Because wrestling is an art form, and there are many, many different types of art that you can consume. The best quote was from Ricochet's open letter and Bubba Dudley's response. A Picasso may be worth millions to others, but it's not worth $1 to me.